Hello everybody, I'm here at Piccadilly Circus, subway, metro, train station, and we are visiting Burlington House. It exists for now 150 years and is the home of Linnean society. The Linnean society is much older, more than 200 years or more than 230 years. And this is where Charles Darwin and Wallace presented the then theory of evolution. Not particularly in the house that we are going to see right now, because it didn't exist back then. Some people say that the actual room in which the papers of Darwin and Wallace were read are now a restroom back in the art gallery in the same building. We don't know that, but we will go to the 150-year-old building and visit the library. Because one of the books is written by a German author, very famous, Alexander von Humboldt. I'm German too, as you can tell from my accent. And let's see who read and owned the book and made some interesting annotation in it, because the library of Linnean Society is just plain wonderful. All right, here is the telephone booth that we usually use to show that we are still in London, in good old London, but it's closed now. It's completely closed. It has been working and functional last time we did a video here, but now it's over. There is still a telephone inside, yeah, but and you know, there's even a digital display, but it's not working anymore. All right. Let's head to Linnean Society. This is Burlington House now. You see the big red flag over there? It's a good red flag, not the bad red flag that you know from social media and hopefully not from your personal life. And the Geological Society here, established 1807, also pretty old, got a very good poster here showing the Sustainable Development Goals. That's a worldwide movement, and whenever you see a circle with all these colors, that is not the diversity flag that probably many of you know, and that you can also hear when you turn around. That's the new type of diversity flag over the streets, the very latest type. And you see that, for example, battery technology, science outreach, and museum curation, paleontology, and so on, of course, renewable energies, obviously, remote sensing, oceanography, and so on. This is part of what needs to be done to reach the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, clean water for everybody, gender equality, life on land must be protected, but also in the water, and everything that you probably know, zero hunger and no poverty. And over here, you may also see other societies, by the way. The other societies are the Royal Academy of Arts, that's in the back, that's a big arts gallery, the Geological Society, Chemistry Society, Society of Antiquaries, Astronomical Society, and Linnean Society. And over here, that's this year's pride flag, so to speak, the latest version you saw dangling there over the street. And theoretically, Burlington House has a bell, but it seems as if the bell is not working anymore. I tried it a few years ago, and I don't know who got the call or the ring from the bell, but as you can see, there's nothing in there anymore. Quite beautiful, actually. This is the art gallery, of course, with a very interesting piece of art. Maybe you can zoom into the art so people can give their opinions on what they think about this piece of art. Yes. And then when we go to the left, straight to the left, you can already see the sign of the Linnean Society. That was a letterbox. And there we are. There are many old images and pictures, of course, of animals and plants here in the entrance area. Quite beautiful. And now I'm going into the library. And before we check the library, we'll talk about that later, we visit the people who actually work there. They are sometimes a little bit shy and don't want to be bothered, but we found one person who can be bothered. Did you have lunch already?
No.
She's going to have lunch, so this has got to be quick. Hello, what's your name?
Isabel.
This is Isabel, and you're a librarian.
I'm head of collections.
You're head of collections, meaning that you're head of, not of the books, but of the plants and animal species?
I'm manager of the collections team. So
The
Will's
boss.
our librarian, Liz is our archivist, Andrea takes care of digital assets, Janet is on conservation, so we each have specialisms.
How many people are employed at Linnean Society?
About 20.
Pretty many people. It's okay, Ines. And we hear that the building is especially made for Linnean Society and the other societies, and that happened 150 years ago. Is that
That's
correct?
right, yes,
It's a big deal. How did the party go?
Which part?
The 150-year party.
Oh, we haven't, it's in November.
You can still join.
Yes, we're celebrating it in November.
Do you know anybody who was around back then, 150 years ago?
Who's still alive?
Who's still alive?
No.
Probably not. You would have to speak to ghosts and specters. But there's a huge archive, I suppose. Is there?
Yes.
About the whole history?
Yes.
Is that open? If
Yes,
somebody
yes,
loves
it's
to
all
study?
online, so the digital, the archive catalogue is online.
So you have a digital manager, you have a digital archive. How much of your library and of your collection is digitalized? What do you think? Like most of the books? Probably not. No, certainly not.
Andrea, any idea of the percentage?
No.
All our founding collection.
Oh, that is digitalized?
Yes, all of Linnean's collections are digitized.
So the complete collection of Linnean's is digitalized, but we will look into a book that is probably not, or probably is, with the handwriting of a very interesting person, and you already know which scientist wrote the book. So we leave you alone, so you can work and get your lunch. Yes, good luck. We are here in the staircase again, and we have a visitor from Germany. Who are you? K.I.Z.E. This is K.I.Z.E. Probably one day also being a fellow of the Linnean Society, and she's visiting the library for the first time. Let's see her reactions. How old are you? 18. Okay, we're entering the library. Recording the first moment in the Linnean Society library. What do you think? It's awesome. What is the most awesomest? You don't know yet. We have to explore. Okay. This is Alfred Russel Wallace. Do you remember who this was? It's the one guy who is the father of evolution. Yeah, he was on the painting downstairs. And apart from that, we leave you alone for 5 minutes now, and we're gonna read. We two are gonna read. Ines is going to eat ice cream. She doesn't want to read, but we're reading, right? Yes. The books are already here, brought to us by librarian Will, who doesn't want to be in the picture because he's a little bit shy. And these are the two volumes, number 1 and number 2, of Alexander von Humboldt's life. It's a biography, and this is volume 1 and volume 2 because volume 3 did not appear in English language in this edition, at least not at this edition. And over here we have like a little pillow that makes the book rest well, so the binding does not break. So that's the great pillow. These are my notes, and this is K.I.Z.E. K.I.Z.E. prepared something for you about Alexander von Humboldt, the German researcher. But why are we showing you why we are not showing you the books in Germany? Because A, this is the English translation, number 1, and number 2, this is from the library of Wallace. Wallace is the man you probably saw that downstairs, who together with Charles Darwin published the then theory of evolution right here at Linnean Society. Linnean Society is a little bit older, 236 years old, but this building is 150 years old. And those books come from the library of Wallace. Wallace died in 1914, and then a rich man, a rich book collector, his father was a mine owner, so pretty rich obviously, bought the books or bought the library, but he was not too much interested in it, obviously, because in 1915 he gave it to the Linnean Society. They only took the science books. All the other books, for example, about spiritualism and politics, went to a different library, first the University of Oxford Library, but then they gave it to the University of Edinburgh. So if you want to read those parts of Wallace's library, then you got to go there. But now let's have a look into what Wallace annotated concerning Humboldt's, what he found interesting in Humboldt's life. Let's open the book. This is volume 1, this is volume 2. We won't go too deep into that because your time is restricted probably, mine is not, because I love it in here. And as soon as we open the book, it says with a stamp of Joseph Thomas in his handwriting, "The annotations are undoubtedly in the hand of Alfred Russel Wallace. Much of his, library, including similarly annotated books, was presented to the Linnean Society in 1915. GB, maybe the librarian. I don't know. So let's open it. In volume 1, there is a beautiful picture of Alexander von Humboldt, aged 26, because when he was younger, he was already very, very much into natural sciences. He even skipped university classes to explore, for example, the River Rhine and the stones that he saw there, because he found it more of importance to get personal experience on scientific matters and on measurements, as you will see very soon, compared to thinking and logics, because that was a very big thing back then. People thought that if you think enough about a matter, even chemistry, then you would find all of the solutions just by thinking, not by doing experiments. So that was something that was widespread, especially in the German-speaking areas, under the influence of philosophers of those times that are still relatively well known today, but Humboldt was different. This is how our special guest arrives. This is K.I.Z.E, our youngest student. You already know her. I'll put away the stuff. And K.I.Z.E, you researched some things about the life of Alexander von Humboldt in the past minutes. What did you find particularly interesting?
I think the most interesting part is that he was an environmentalist. So he talked about, climate change about 200 years ago, because he said that all of nature is interconnected, and if some part is like destroyed or something, something else can be destroyed as well. So I think that's interesting.
Do you know how he found out? Did you see that during the research?
No, I don't know.
He saw that by really walking out and doing like large tours, traveling through the world and observing plants and trees, and super accurately writing down where everything grew and so on. Did you find out anything else?
I found out when he was born and where.
And where was that?
So he was born in 1769 in Germany, and he died in 1859, and so he was about 89 years old when he died.
Pretty old for that time.
Yeah.
What else do you have?
His main field was geography, so for his studies he traveled a lot to America, Spain, Russia, everywhere.
The most famous travel was probably going to the Orinoco River, and he traveled there with his friend, and he sent over many specimens, but that was quite painful at that time because he had to put it into boxes, and of course the ships were sinking and there were storms, and they had to do everything double or triple fold, so that was quite a pain that you cannot experience to today's travels. You did a study travel too. Where did your last study travel head? Where was it headed?
It was at the Azores. It's somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean.
What did you see there, and what did you explore?
We explored whales, mostly whales, yeah.
And what did you learn about whales?
A lot.
For example?
I don't know how they live, where they live.
Where do they live? How do they live?
We do not have time for that.
We do not have time for that. Let's better look into the book. Thank you very much, special guest K.I.Z.E. Thank you. I found out about this very interesting and peculiar book of both volumes because there was a little speech. It's called Linnean Lens, and you can find that on YouTube. And it was done by a guy called Jeb Beers, something like that. I'll put the link below. And he talked about all the annotations that Wallace made into the Alexander von Humboldt book, or about the library in general. He was here for 6 months and studied really everything, so super accurate. But I will only show you a few things that may be of interest for you, and then you can research for yourself if you're interested in anything any further. Number one, in the translator's preface, it says, in rendering quotations from Faust, this is a very famous German, like kind of a poem, novel in rhymes, the translators have followed the metrical version. The thermometric readings are given according to Fahrenheit scale. So already see one of the big differences that we have in the Anglo-American world compared to the rest of the world. People over here use inches and feet and so on and so on. So that's something that the translators had to be very accurate about, because Humboldt was a very accurate man. Then in the preface, I also found something interesting, because this is the biography of Humboldt in 2 volumes. It was 3 volumes in Germany, but over here it's 2 volumes, and some not so interesting parts were cut out. But Humboldt did not want any biography written about him. He totally was against it, like really against it. I'm quoting Humboldt here. He says, I have so often refused to take part in any biographical notice of either myself or my brother. The brother was a super famous person interested in education and languages, but not in natural sciences. So Wilhelm von Humboldt was his name. Whether by furnishing materials or by revising the compilations of others, that I feel compelled to preserve the same line of conduct in Germany that I have hitherto maintained both in France and England. My horror of biographies my horror of biographies is almost as great as that which I feel for the portraits of old men painted by the sun, although both may be viewed in the history of sciences as a disagreeable necessity. Life is daily losing for me its charm, and I need your kindest indulgence, my worthy friend, for this idiosyncrasy of an old man. I have even inserted a clause in my will forbidding that any eulogy should be pronounced over me at the Institute. That's from 1841, but as you can imagine, since he was a super famous scientist at that point, he was really like a superstar scientist, his letters leaked out and so on, and people starting to write a biography. Similar things happened to other people too. For example, Charles Chaplin, the famous actor, also wanted that all his films to be destroyed, I mean the ones that weren't published already, and so on, but nobody took care. Same with Albert Einstein, I guess. People just love their superstars. So let's check which annotations Wallace made. This is in the back of the book. Many annotations made with a pen. And let's look at, for example, what did I find? Let's see, let me check. Page 144, his lone episode. So there was a lone episode relating to Alexander von Humboldt. Let's see what that episode is. So this is the lone episode here, or something relating to something that Wallace found very lonely. Humboldt was not placed by nature beyond the reach of ordinary human sensibilities, but the unconquerable desire for a course of many years' adventurous travel, the necessity for being in a state of continual readiness for a change of residence, and his unreserved devotion to science, all exacted from him the ruthless sacrifice of the comforts of the stationary home and the sweet happiness of domestic ties. That was something that Wallace found interesting and probably strange. And indeed, Humboldt was not married, and only when he was an old man, he had a super huge library like this one here, a private library. And was made like very unfriendly remarks about people in high society and people behaving super posh and just talking about things that only would scratch the surface in Berlin, which was the capital city of Germany, in which Humboldt lived. Let's see if we find another interesting note. It says here, page 197, study of farts. And I'm like, no, unlikely, I mean, but not impossible, since Humboldt was someone who measured a lot, but he was not interested in medical sciences or something, so, or anthropology, as we would call it today in the biological field. So I'm like, what? Maybe that's something else. And of course, it's the study of facts. It's a study of facts. And that was something, as I already said, that was considered to be unusual, because many people, as I mentioned, thought that by thinking you could solve every problem. So let's see what Wallace refers to here. Upon the value and necessity of studying science in a severely empiric manner, especially from the standpoint he then occupied, Humboldt often expressed himself in the most decided manner. He followed Bacon's precept, which he often called to mind during the undertakings he was at that time engaged upon, that nature should first be observed and as many of her phenomena as possible collated. His method consisted in, quote, assembling mere facts, not farts, facts, and never admitting anything which lay beyond the boundary of actual experience. So Wallace, of course, did the same, and that made him one of the discoverers of evolution. If you ever want to read something about that, you could either read one of the books of Wallace, but also Charles Darwin's books, because once you read them, you realize that many people think Darwin was a little bit, sickly and retreated and not working a lot and sleeping a lot, because he described himself like that. But in reality, they were just assembling fact over fact over fact over fact. So Wallace was like that, Humboldt was like that, Darwin was like that. Okay, let's check one final note, and then we are done. The final note that we're going to look at is page 205, Philosophy Run Mad, and same page, Science, the Friend of Truth. Today we would say science is the truth, but some people think there's something beyond the measurable truth. So let's check page 205. When on the death of Fichte in 1814, Schelling in southern Germany and Hegel in northern Germany, all philosophers, assumed the lead in the world of science, it was expected that philosophy would be able, by means of pure reason and abstract ideas, to attain those results which formerly had only been reached by aid of experiment. She gave the abstract thought a position she denied to the sober empirical labors of the scientific investigator. According to her rules, nothing was to be left unexplained, ignorance was never to be acknowledged, and often a complete want of comprehension was veiled by a superfluity of words, though these might be entirely irrelevant to the subject. In this way, these arose a system of chemistry in which no hands need to be soiled, and a system of astronomy in which neither measurements nor calculations were required. Even men of distinguished merit and acute powers of observation, such as Niels von Esenbeck, Oken, who founded the German Society of Medical Doctors and Scientists. Check our videos on this society. It just had a jubilee. K.I.Z.E and Ines behind the camera were both there with me. Walter, Schubert, Carew, etc. were carried away by this delusion, while the men of true science, Blumenbach, Sommering, Meckel, Trevianus, Pfaff, and Ehrmann, were left to pursue their investigations in solitude, like the measurements, not the thinking. It was not within the power of Humboldt to stem this desolating torrent. This deplorable epoch was termed by him a mad Saturnalia, the ballon masque of natural philosophy run mad. And as you have heard, Wallace also made a little note saying philosophy run mad. At that point, natural sciences were considered to be just a part of philosophy. This is why in English-speaking countries you don't get a doctor of biology or a doctor of physics, but a philosophical doctor, PhD. That's the reason, and as you heard, this was the kind of the dark ages at the return of thinking caused by the philosophy of words in contrast to the natural sciences, natural philosophy of measurements. With this, I'm going to leave you alone. Please check the library of Linnean Society. The friendly librarian is also here, and he's going to talk to you and help you in any way, but he doesn't want to be on camera. And we are heading out back to London. Like I mentioned, we are in the absolute middle of town. Tourists here, chaos here, and everything costs double. But we are super happy that this 150-year-old building and library still exists, because for a few years it seemed as if the society could not afford that anymore, but that problem is solved. So they are going to be here for you and for me and for K.I.Z.E and for Ines and for everybody else. Thank you very much. Cheers from Burlington House in the middle of London at Piccadilly Circus. Mark.